Okay. Hello, we're here with Julie Bowland, and we have your show up in the gallery right now, Venvi Art Gallery. I guess my first question for you is, the title of the show is In a Vivid Light. Would you like to elaborate more on that and what it means?
Sure. Hi, Serena and everybody, whoever might be listening. Yeah, so I guess painting outdoors is really all about the light, and for me, it's all about color, and color exists because of light. So uh, the idea of a vivid light is both, my paintings tend to be I kind of exaggerate what I see, you might say. I interpret, but I kind of amp things up. My dad used to say that what I did with North Florida was like more, it wasn't what you would expect, because sometimes it's just kind of you're out in some scrubby little place, and like to me it's all really beautiful and there's so much color and there's so much light. So I try to take that experience of the color and light and sort of magnify it, you might say. So it's particularly vivid in a way. Maybe if I would have named the show In a Subtle Light, probably people would have been like, what? So anyway, to me, things are vivid. I try to see things vividly and paint them that way. And like I say, kind of an increased experience of the color and light.
Yes, I definitely see that. And I just noticed that that's the tumultuous sea painting behind you,
Yeah.
right? That's so funny. That's
Mhm.
actually my favorite one that we have up in the gallery right
Oh,
now.
is it?
And a
It's one of
viewer
my
that came
favorites.
in yesterday also said it was her favorite. So we all love this
Nice.
one. It's funny that you picked it.
Well, I don't get a chance to get to the ocean too much, and this is at Volano Beach, just north of St. Augustine, and I happened to find like a nice shelter, in a park right on the beach, as things were pretty tumultuous. It was kind of rainy and there was a storm coming in, and it was a lot of fun to be able to set up and kind of experience that storm in the safety of a shelter and try to paint it.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that with the storm running, like rolling in at the beach, and it's such a moody experience. You really
Yeah,
captured it.
thanks.
Okay, so the next question is, you were obviously trained in school to hone your skills. What artist did you work with that inspired your interest in choosing your palette, your
Well,
remarkable
that's a very local question, because
palette?
I did go to FSU, and there's a couple artists who were very influential in my palette, and they both show at Venvi Gallery, and they are Mark Messersmith and Ray Burgraff. So they were really my major painting professors, and I had gone to school in Jacksonville at a community college, for my first 2 years. So I took my basic painting there, and kind of had the regular palette that everybody uses. And when I came to FSU and Mark Messersmith, and I think, anybody who's watching this, I'm sure knows Mark and knows his work, and how vivid his color is. And I learned so much about color from him. And, one thing he did with us as students is he restricted our use of white. I'm not going to say he took it away altogether, but I remember for one project he did. He said, just don't even use any white. And so it kind of made you look for more rich colors. And so the idea of creating space and creating a background just by adding white. And that's kind of an aerial perspective thing. Just make it lighter, make it duller, and it'll recede into the background. And he wasn't about that. He was always like, as long as the foreground and background are different, you're going to perceive them as being in different spaces. So he taught me so much about color, and also the idea of using dark, deep colors, and the phthalos. Like, I never used phthalo blue and green before I met Mark. And then maybe I went a little overboard. I don't know. Even in this painting, you see phthalo blue and green. I remember when I went to Arizona and was a graduate student there. They kind of like tried to undo. They like said, you need to just take your phthalo blue and green and put it in a box and bury it. But the other big influence was Ray Burgraff. And of course, Mark and Ray are very different in their art and in their approach to teaching, but they were both my major professors, so they both gave me so much. And of course, Ray is such a student of color theory and such a teacher of color theory. So I learned a great deal from both of them, but in very different ways. And it sticks with me. And I still teach, lessons to my students that I learned from them.
That's beautiful. And I love what you said about how art school did that to you, because I feel like that's such an important part of art school. Like the things that they tell you not to do, and if you still do them afterwards, that means that you're really meant to do them,
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember, and funny thing, I remember one day when I was an graduate student, and I went out to paint because I was painting from the landscape back then too. And I remember where I was. I was out on Buck Lake Road at Goose Pasture when it still existed before it was a subdevelopment. And it was just a really bright light day. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to use white. And I just like used all the white. I was just like rebellion against Mark. And I made this like super high key value, painting with all this like pastel colors. And I was like, see, I can do it. But, generally I still kind of stick with that principle.
Awesome. Okay. And the next question is, for the first time you're exhibiting your Kayak Dairies series, and I have seen you enjoy painting sitting on the kayak, but how do you manage doing it? Do you use the water from the stream directly, or how do you balance yourself? Is it difficult?
Yeah, so, it just is a lot less to deal with logistically to take, watercolors and a pad and, because as I work pretty large with the oil paintings for a plein air painter. Usually plein air painters are painting on these little like 8x10, and so I'll work like this painting is 24x30, for instance, and that's not atypical, but I can't take that in a kayak. I can actually do oil painting in a canoe because there's more room, but a kayak is so much fun, and it's a kind of a hobby I picked up about 5 or 6 years ago. I just loved it so much, but somehow I feel inadequate just to go out and have a good time paddling around. So I take my watercolors and I take my pad, and it just kind of opened up this whole nother side of my art. And I was able to just be very playful and very casual and just do, pull over. Usually I'll pull over in the kayak and paint, but it's kind of a fun thing. But it's just logistically, it's much easier to deal with a pad and watercolors. And of course, I just use the water that's right there. There's no reason why I wouldn't. So I guess it has that little bit of that organic aspect that, has a little bit of the Withlacoochee River in it, that type of thing. But I enjoy that a lot. I really enjoy what I call the Kayak Diaries, because they are kind of like diaries. It's just my little personal impression of where I'm off, floating today. And they're all really beautiful places that would be difficult to get a 30x40 inch canvas, back in there.
Yeah, I know. I love them for that reason, that they're so playful with the pastel and everything. And and it's funny, the organic matter that gets into your paintings, because you're a plein air painter. It's really tickled some viewers recently. The one oil painting has like a leaf stuck in it.
Oh yeah.
And everyone points it out, and they're like, "Did she mean to do this?"
I know. Like, don't clean that off. That's part of the painting now.
Exactly.
There's one at City Hall of some aspens out west, out in Arizona, and it has some teeny shells, like some tiny, teeny, like snail shells stuck in it that were there. And I wonder, if anybody knows that painting at City Hall, like look for those shells. I don't know where it's placed now. It might be in storage. It might be, who knows where it is. But yeah, sometimes stuff gets into painting. That's okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Or sand. You'll see some sand probably in the beach ones.
I did. I noticed the sand, and I really, really enjoyed that. Okay, so a little bit questions about materials. So we see that you work with oils and watercolors and encaustic, but what made you interested in these specific mediums? And this one's the encaustic.
Well, oils, that's an encaustic, and I'll talk about that, but I'll just say that oil is my base. Oil is what I, learned on, that I love, that is my favorite, that I consider my, bread and butter, you might say. Love oil. I love the color. I love what you can do with it. I love the smell. I love the way it slathers on a canvas or a panel. I'm always insulted if someone says to me, "Oh, so you paint in acrylics?" I'm like, anyway, that's an old battle, but but people kind of think because my colors are kind of bright that it must be acrylics, but oil is just so incredibly versatile, and I love it so much. The watercolors, I wasn't trained as a watercolorist, and you can tell that by looking at my watercolors. They're more fun and they're more play, and they're you know they are what they are. They're great. And then the encaustics, something altogether. So if you don't know what encaustic is, it's a wax-based medium. So I actually cook up beeswax, add a little paint. I mean, you could add pure pigment. I just add a little oil paint and some resin, some Damar varnish crystals to harden it. People worry about, well, it's wax, so it's going to melt in the heat, but it doesn't because of the inclusion of the Damar varnish. That this resin hardens it, and then you heat the whole thing. But yeah, encaustics can be so subtle and so lovely, which of course isn't really my thing, but but I really wanted to try them, and I like them a lot. They're very process oriented. It takes a long time. You can't exactly do them out in the field, but I'll say that the one that you're showing there, which is called my dear departed father named that Swamp in Repose, but it's the Little River. It's up here in Georgia, up here near Valdosta, well, a little north of Valdosta, and it's at Bingham State Park. That's a pretty big canvas. That's a 3-foot by 4-foot canvas. But I actually did drag that canvas quite a ways, probably, I won't say a mile, but probably more than half a mile out on this boardwalk at Bingham State Park. And I painted the underpainting in acrylic. Guess what? Acrylic. Because because it makes a good base, it makes a good underpainting. So I painted the underpainting in plein air with acrylic, and then I brought it back to the studio, and I mixed up my concoction of wax and paint and varnish, and it takes it's many layers. So typically, if I paint, say, like the painting you see here is about, essentially it's 3 layers, but I do it all within the span of say a couple hours. But the painting of the encaustic, it's like many layers, and it takes a lot longer, and most of it's done inside. But again, I was super curious about it. Really, what got me interested in encaustic was teaching here at Valdosta State University when I first came. I've actually been here 19 years, which is kind of shocking, I know. But the person who used to teach painting primarily here at VSU taught encaustics, and he got such good results from the students, and it just made me want to try it. And so I did. And, I sort of think I might do more, but it is just very different. It's very like inside and process, and but I like it, and I like that it's different. The texture of the surface and the translucent quality of the colors showing through, and the unusual lumps and bumps and all that kind of stuff are real interesting to me.
Yes, I liked the unusual lumps and bumps too. That's really what makes
it's a technical term. I learned that in art school.
Okay.
Kind of like blobs of oil paint.
Yeah. And so I guess just a more general question, you might have touched on this a little bit, but what influences your painting?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question. I already talked about some teachers, so not to ignore them, but I talked about them.
Yeah.
I think my earliest influence, and I'll say I always feel like I always was an artist. I think I'm one of those people that was just born needing to make art. So as a small child, I grew up in the Midwest, South Bend, Indiana, and my parents were pretty cool people, and they took us kids to Chicago, to the Chicago Art Institute. And we went there, and I mean, we didn't go there like every weekend, but we went there on a regular basis. So I really grew up looking at the actual paintings of Van Gogh and Monet and others as well. And it affected me deeply. And I wanted to I wanted to do that. You know, I mean, I wanted to make paintings. I mean, I didn't know how you could or how that worked out, but I mean, it was like, yeah, I want to do that. And it really was the texture and the color and seeing the paintings in person. And, you know, I know we're going to talk about online and all that, and we can wait and talk about that, but I will say that there is nothing like seeing art in person. And I think I'm going to go ahead and talk about it.
I agree.
The whole online and digital, and like obviously this last year, we've all had to adapt, and that's just life, and that's just how it is. And I have too. I've taught online, which is ridiculous to teach art online, but I've done it and I've learned things. Showing in the gallery online, and texture and the surface is so important to me. But we've all had to adapt, and it has a role, and it'll stick with us. I mean, we're all still going to use, I think we're all still going to use the internet and computers and digital images a lot more than we did before, even though we're kind of going back to the real thing. But it is the real thing to see it in person. So more than anything, seeing real art at an early age. And then the other influence is just nature itself, is that I've always been a profound lover of nature. So something like this, you know, the energy of the storm, the color of the water, all those things you really can't communicate adequately. You know, I like to try. So I'm going to just say seeing real art at an early age and being kind of just like a friend of nature. Those are probably my two biggest influences, besides specific teachers, as I've already mentioned.
Awesome. Okay, and do you draw and do you keep a
Oh,
sketchbook?
oh yeah, I love to draw, and I keep many sketchbooks, and I like to do works on paper. I mean, you know, the Kayak Diaries from the kayak, but I also like to I love to do pastels, soft pastels. The thing I hate about them is you have to frame them. You know, yeah, you do something on paper and you want to like share it or bring it to the gallery. You gotta frame it, and that's kind of stops a little bit of that from making it to the gallery. But yeah, I love to draw.
Awesome. And some questions about training. So you did live and work in Tallahassee art community for 25 years. So would you like to discuss your time at FSU as a student at all, and just in the art community around Tallahassee and how that influenced you?
Yeah, I mean, I love Tallahassee and I really miss it. And it's hard to believe that I've physically been gone for 19 years because I still feel like Tallahassee is home to me. Like I said, I grew up in the Midwest, but honestly, it doesn't feel like home to me anymore. I mean, I don't go back, but I come back to Tallahassee for one day and I'll run into three people I know, you know. I mean, that's just how Tallahassee is. Tallahassee is home and I love it. And I miss it. And it, you know, going to FSU was a really positive experience, largely because of those two teachers I already mentioned, Mark Messersmith and Ray Burgraff. They really helped guide me to what it is that I love to do, to help me find what I love to do. And then, you know, I started showing in galleries pretty early when I was there. I mean, way before Venvi. I mean, Venvi's great, but I mean, talking about the Nice Picture Gallery in Havana with Tom Jacoby and showing at 621. I was the director of 621 Gallery, you know, for years, starting in the early 90s.
Wow, I didn't know that. How
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So I have a long history, and then I worked for now what's called COCA, but back then was the Cultural Resources Commission. So working with artists to uh, show artwork at City Hall and the airport, and we had a budding outdoor sculpture program back then. And so my experiences both in school and professionally in Tallahassee are deeply meaningful to me. And like I say, I still consider it home.
Do you think you'll return ever to live?
Uh, you know, where I'd like to live is south of Tallahassee, is down in Wacissa and down towards the coast would be an awesome place to retire. But you know, who knows?
We'll see.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that was a goal for a long time, was to return to Tallahassee, but you
You're
know,
close.
I need a day job. So, you know, if somebody's got a day job they want to offer me, like we can talk. Sure. I'd love to come back.
Yeah. Uh, okay. So now you live in Valdosta, Georgia. And is that right on the border kind of
Yeah,
Georgia?
yeah. I live approximately 18 miles north of the border.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on Valdosta's on 75, and it's like I say, it's just immediately north
Okay.
of Florida. So it's not a big jump, and it's not a bad place.
Yeah.
And but it's not Tallahassee either.
And then you're working as a professor of art at Valdosta State University, VSU, and direct the VSU
Dido, Moranville.
Fine Arts Gallery. And how is that influencing you as an artist right now?
Well, it keeps me plugged in, it keeps me plugged into art. I mean, I like teaching. I've had the opportunity to teach plein air painting, and that's not the only thing I teach. But it keeps me plugged in, and working with artists in the gallery is always stimulating. We bring in artists from, not just regionally, but, across the country. We've been closed for a year. We're going to open back up in the fall. So to real art, we moved everything to a website. So we've continued to show, but instead of me showing artwork on the walls, all of a sudden I'm a webmaster. Yeah, who knew I would do that? But like I say, adapt or die, right? Anyway, it has kept me plugged into art for sure.
Good, good, good. So this show was initially scheduled to be in person, just in person, and now it is both in person and online, considering the safety of everyone. So you have touched on this, and it is a very interesting subject. Are you comfortable with showing online rather than having only in gallery shows? And I know you've touched on this a lot, but any final thoughts? Because it's an interesting subject.
Well, I think one thing that can happen is, and one thing that's good about showing online is it can reach a much larger audience and a much broader audience. So whether the viewers are, in California or in Tallahassee, they can certainly check things out online, and then, if they're close by, hopefully come and see the real thing, if it's something that interests you. As far as folks that aren't close by enough to see it in person, um, I would say that, go ahead and buy something. If you don't like it, send it back. It's meant to be experienced in reality, and showing work online and digitally is a valuable tool, but it's not the real thing. So if you've downloaded an image and it's on your screensaver, that's not the art. Come and get it. Come and see the real thing. So that would be my final thought.
I agree completely. Okay, Julie, well, it's been so nice to talk to you. Is there
Thank you.
anything else you want to say on record? But we're out of questions. That was it. Questions.
No, I hope people, like I say, will come and see the work in person. And, if you're not able to, thanks for looking at it online, because, gosh, Brenda and Vera have done an incredible job of making that new website. Just in the matter of months, it's really gone from, okay, I can kind of see what you have, to almost as close to an experience of coming to the gallery as possible. And I think that's great, and I appreciate that very much, the work that goes into that. I know, because I do it now for my gallery here in Valdosta. So they've just done a great job of getting the work seen online, but still, I hope folks will come and see the work in person.
Definitely, and they have been. People have been coming in each day.
Good, I'm glad.
Okay, well, thank you again.